Zi Bai is going to be the best Geo DPS. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. I've mentioned this before, but I believe that Zi Bai is easily going to become the new best Geo DPS, and when it comes to competition in that department, there is one main character that we have to discuss, that being Navia. To be honest, I feel like it's pretty obvious that she's going to be better than the rest of the Geo DPSing cast, because the rest of her competition mostly just contains Ito Mono Geo, in which case, yes, Zi Bai beats that out easily. However, I would like to focus on Navia in particular here, for a couple of reasons. First of all, she was the best Geo DPS in the game for quite a while now, and to think that Navia is a weak unit now, or that she's fallen off significantly, wouldn't exactly be the case. Now, I will admit that Navia has definitely had her time in the meta. She is not exactly one of the best DPSs in the game or anything like that, and she hasn't been for a long time. There was a time in which she was extremely powerful, but at this point, I would say that she's a great unit. Not even just good, I do actually think she is quite great. Because the thing with Navia that most people don't do is that you want to extend her rotation a little bit to include a third skill blast in there, which definitely increases her performance by quite a significant margin, and it puts her, I'd say, a good bit below the really good Notlon carries. She's definitely not some top meta unit anymore, but to say that she's weak nowadays would actually just be plain wrong, not to mention how she recently got another team not too long ago whenever Duran released. The Hexarai buffs made Albedo quite viable again, and the Duran Albedo core is honestly a pretty close contender for Navia's best team. Using Shilonen is still best in slot, but either way, that's still another powerful option that's at this lady's disposal. So, with that in mind, I would not call Navia a bad unit nowadays whatsoever. Now yes, if you're pulling her these days, it is mostly just because you like Navia as a character, but to say that she's weak now would just be plain wrong. So in terms of how much better Zi Bai is over Navia, I would say that a budget Zi Bai, using her full 4-star team on Harbinger of Dawn, is still definitely going to be better than premium Navia. But it's not by a margin that insults Navia. I will say, the Horse Lady is definitively better even at a budget level. It's just not to an extent that insults Navia. And that just goes to show that this character honestly aged quite well. If you invested into Navia a long time ago, you can be proud of the fact that she honestly aged like fine wine. She's not one of the best characters in the game anymore, obviously, but I'd say the fact that she is still a highly competent DPS is very, very nice. And I honestly think that if you're not interested in this upcoming character, and you just want a good Geo DPS to work with, and you pulled for Navia back in Fontaine, you can honestly just keep using her. You don't need to upgrade to Zi Bai, so don't feel pressured to upgrade if you don't want to upgrade. Now, I will say that if you give the Horse Lady her premium investment, then yes, she does kind of stomp Navia, but that much is to be expected. Current lunar carries are extremely strong, and the lunar meta is at its peak right now, especially after Columbina released, and all of the lunar teams now have access to their definitive best-in-slot teams. Maybe Zi Bai gets another crystallized support in the future, but I kind of doubt that considering that she's already so strong as is. So I think premium Zi Bai being stronger than Navia by a significant margin isn't really going to be a surprise to anyone, but I would like to emphasize that it's not like Navia is so much significantly worse to the point where an upgrade feels necessary. So I will say, while Navia is indeed being dethroned as the best Geo DPS, it's not like she is no longer viable. You can definitely still use her and get by more than just fine with her. She is still a strong, competent unit. So I don't necessarily want to put down Navia as being some trash unit because that's just not the case. And you're easily able to access some more damage on her if you're willing to extend her rotation just a little bit. So honestly, still a very competent unit. But with that being said, the Horse Lady is going to end up being the definitive new best Geo DPS, and I feel like that is to be expected. I do think, considering how long Navia lasted as the best Geo DPS, we were due for an upgrade, and what better way to introduce that than through a Lunar Crystallized unit, because we're currently in the Lunar meta, and I also feel that this was a very natural way to pass on the torch from Navia to Zi Bai. So all around, I'm actually personally pretty happy with this. I don't really think that this is some big insult to Navia players, because that character is still going to be really good. Now, I will say that if you're looking to invest more Primo Gems into one unit, I would suggest doing that on the Horse Lady over Navia, simply because you're just going to get way better bang for your Primo Gems, because while Constellations and Fontaine were very good, I will say that nowadays, DPS Constellations are absolutely ridiculous, And when you pull on Zi Bai's banner, you're also just getting a really good deal all around, because her banner is going to have all of her teammates on it. So, with that in mind, it's just an excellent deal to invest more into Zi Bai over Navia at this point. And then obviously, because she is so inherently strong, she just naturally beats out Navia, the standard of DPSing is just higher now than it was in Fontaine. The Fontaine carries were absolutely excellent for their time, but at this stage, while they definitely can still clear the Abyss competently, they're not the cream of the crop anymore, and they're not necessarily any of the best DPSs anymore. The lunar characters have long since taken over. I would say this situation isn't too dissimilar to what's up with Veressa and Flynn's. Veressa is not the best Electro DPS. That would be Flynn's, and it is probably going to be Flynn's for quite a while. But that is not to say that Veressa is a bad character. Far from it. She is still a very good, competent, high-damaging DPS. I'll say that it's going to be somewhat similar with Navia. The reason why I say somewhat similar is because Veressa is still definitely a better DPS than Navia, but I don't want you to underestimate Navia. She's still good, but even so, Zi Bai is easily going to be the best Geo DPS. And I think considering how healthy the lifespan of the Spina leader's meta value was, I think that investing into this horse lady is not a bad choice whatsoever, considering that Geo DPSs just tend to last for a very long time. As for why she's better, it is just plain and simply, she does a lot more damage no matter what the investment level is. She is better than Navia even if you only have budget teammates and a budget weapon, and she is definitively better than Navia, as in no contest better than Navia, if you have a premium investment. To be honest, there's also no contest even if you're looking at it from a free-to-play angle, but all around, no matter what way the cookie crumbles, you're basically always going to be seeing Zi Bai doing more damage than Navia overall. No matter what way you look at it, she is a definitive upgrade. And of course, I've said that I don't want to be too harsh on Navia, because I don't want to put across this idea that she's not a good character anymore, or that she's suddenly super duper weak just because we're getting a new Geo DPS now, because it doesn't work like that. It simply doesn't work like that. She is still a good character, as I have said multiple times at this point. I just want to really make that clear. But yes, the horse lady just is better. And the more you invest, the more evident that's going to be. She just has more things going in her favor. C1s on DPSs these days are just so much better than they used to be. The power spike between C1 and C2 are both really good, whereas before C2 was the main power spike on most DPS characters, with a couple of exceptions where C1 was also pretty good. Mr. Settle Down being a pretty good example of a character that had a good C1 back in Fontaine. But all around, the C1s these days are just insane, so there's that. And of course, C2s are still as broken as ever. And there's the fact that because this is a lunar carry we're talking about, and the lunar meta is just at its peak right now, obviously the lunar carry is going to be better than a 2-year-old Fontainian DPS. And I think this just goes to show how well Navia aged, and how her kit design was just really good, because to this day, she is still a very competent DPS, and if you pulled for her now, she wouldn't necessarily feel weak. You can still very much invest into this character and still feel like you're getting something out of her. It ends up being a very straightforward answer at the end of the day, because it does boil down to pretty much just damage, because it's not like Navia was a character that required premium investment to be good either. Zi Bai's also a very free-to-play friendly character, but Navia was too. She could also use 4-star teammates and perform excellently. Bennett, Xiangling, Kachina, that was a great team for her. I will say that pre-Notlan, we were lacking a proper dedicated buffer for Navia, and we just didn't get a real one until later on. I would say that Kachina and Shilonen were the first proper actual buffers that Navia got, and there was an attempt with Chiori, but she just didn't really synergize with Navia's kit in particular, so even though she was the best in slot for a while, the moment Kachina came out, that character got retired. But at least from Notlan onwards, she did have a really good budget team, and even back during the Fontaine era, she definitely had solid budget teams. It's just that she didn't really have any good 4-star option that's as good as Kachina currently is for her. But Zi Bai having a great premium 4-star teammate on release, and also being able to use Aino and Goro excellently, 2 of her 4 stars, just works excellently in the horse lady's favor. I will say another interesting similarity is that neither of them really needed their respective Archons in order to be good characters. Lady Farina is an excellent unit for Navia, but far from a necessary one. And same with Zi Bai. You don't really require Columbina in order for that character to perform, but she does still provide her with her current best-in-slot team. So, all around, while they do have some similarities, it really is just a case of time has passed and standards have risen. But I would say that this isn't really anything groundbreaking. If anything, I think this is to be expected. Every year, the DPSing standard does simply rise. Nowadays, the DPSing standard is way higher than we ever could have imagined it to be back in Fontaine. I think if you told somebody in Fontaine about the current Genshin meta, they would be pretty surprised, but that's just kind of to be expected. The characters get stronger as time goes on, and we get more archetypes as time goes on, and the lunar meta is just more dominant over what Navia is able to provide. It's pretty clear why Zi Bai is the best Geo DPS at the end of the day. Navia served excellently during her time, but even so, simply being a newer DPS is just in Zi Bai's favor, and she also gets to enjoy some other modern benefits, such as having a nice C1. You don't need to abandon your Navia if you don't want to, but I will say that the horse is better. It's not by some margin that absolutely insults Navia, unless you're going for premium Zi Bai, then it kind of does insult her, but it is very much noticeable, and I would say that Navia's time has certainly come. And even so, I'm proud of what that character was able to do. She was really cool at the time, and even now I still think her kit's really cool, even if the horse lady definitely does do better than her. Because ultimately, you could have invested nothing into Columbina or nothing into the lunar meta at this point, pick up Zi Bai, and there you go, you've got yourself the new best Geo DPS in the game, definitively. Now, I will say that if you assume Navia only does 2 skill nukes per rotation, then yes, Zi Bai suddenly gets a whole lot better than her, but considering that it doesn't require that much extra effort in order for you to do 3 Navia skill nukes per rotation, I'm gonna say if you're going under that assumption, she's definitely not going to look as weak as you might think she is. So don't underestimate her, but Zi Bai is definitely better. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why Zi Bai is the best Geo DPS. This has been Juice, signing out, and time comes to inevitably get us all, but even if that is the case, Navia, I will never forget what you did for the meta at the time. Forever the first to actually good Geo DPS that lasted a while.